together in one place. I'm making 4 different copies. Whatever I tell you, you'll just be absolutely crazy. So I'm going to hope you're curious about all the others. And if you receive this, channels, assume the worst. I was about to say, come find my ass, but that's not going to. I have regrets, and good luck. Hello and welcome to Gallowtree Lighthouse Museum. My name is Robert York and I will be your host as you take our self-guided tour. Now, you may be asking yourself, considering that Gallowtree is in the single most landlocked location possible in all of the British Isles, why is there a lighthouse? We are as far from a body of water as you can get and it could not possibly serve any useful purpose. Well, its history and creation is directly tied to the creation and founding of Gallowtree itself. This brand new audio tape is for people who wish to take the self-guided tour. If you know of anyone who is using the old audio tapes, please pause this tape right now and contact them immediately. Unfortunately, the directions in the old tape do not take into consideration the newly formed sinkhole. This has resulted in a number of accidental injuries. The Gallowtree Lighthouse Museum no longer uses the old tapes and is not financially responsible for any injuries that may have occurred by using any bootleg versions of them. We understand some people who wanted to be cheap copied the tape and did not buy originals from the museum itself. These tapes are souvenirs and should be cherished, but if you want to shortchange a non-for-profit organization trying to preserve your community's heritage that is being crushed beneath the weight of an obscene amount of debt caused by a number of completely unreasonable injury claims, I guess we can't stop you. The non-for-profit organization is being crushed, not your community's heritage. Anyway, please inform anyone you know to discontinue the use of any bootleg cassettes for their own safety. Please consult your map that came with your audio tape and check to see if you are standing at marker number 1. If you are not, please pause the tape until you are standing at marker number 1, facing in the same direction the blue arrow on the ground is pointing. Welcome to the start of your self-guided tour. As you can see before you is the partially rebuilt structure that is the Gallowtree Lighthouse. To understand the structure, you must understand the history of this place. To your left, you will find a rather large hole with a newly created railing and walkway. If you arrive at the correct time, you may be lucky to observe the team of archaeologists working to uncover this amazing find. Before you is a plastic dome that is protecting the stump of the original Gallowtree on which this town was founded. The stump was thought to have been destroyed during the Great Collapse of 1865, but as it turns out the stump was merely covered in rubble and was just uncovered this year in that newly created sinkhole. A most exciting time here at the Gallowtree Lighthouse Museum. While it was in the right location, it wasn't until a month before the recording of this audio tape that they confirmed that this was the Gallowtree. Descriptions of the Gallowtree are old considering its destruction, but this stump does match records. What makes it unusual is that the tree in question is not native to the UK, or even to Europe, but to North America. It is the eastern white cedar known to grow only along the Niagara escarpment. This tree is well known for its painfully slow growing process of less than an inch every 15 years. The tree in its native land is known to live for upwards of 1,000 years. Judging by the size of this tree, we believe that at the time of its burning, that it was no less than 4,000 years old. It's hard to tell because the rings of the tree are only visible with a microscope. The process of counting is difficult and hampered by age and fire. Please pause here and proceed to marker number 2. Welcome to the timeline. This little hutch has the entire timeline of the Gallowtree Lighthouse at your disposal. We will be discussing events in detail as we proceed with our tour, but we will begin with the prehistory of Gallowtree. We start back in the Neolithic, where we believe that for some reason there was an outbreak of white cedar trees in this area. We are uncertain exactly how this took place, but evidence shows that the area was remarkably boggy at the time. The only known examples of this tree were found on this hill. Although the name of this place is Mount Fiendensfell, it is actually technically termed a hill and not a mountain. Still, it was once one of the highest locations around, surrounded by a seemingly endless, desolate moor. The mountain was the only place where the white cedar grew and became known as a sacred place to Neolithic humans. Archaeologists have found many nearby graves with multiple different burials, indicating that either many burial rites have taken place here over many centuries, or that the fanciful stories of ancient pagan worship of dark powers were true, and these are the remains of human sacrifices. The truth of the matter is that this area remained in isolation from the rest of the world for quite some time, up until the Roman Iron period, when it is approximately 300 AD, during the Dialectian division, rumors of a devil cult reached the ears of the Vicar of Britain, who then dispatched Roman troops to deal with the problem. Surviving records speak of a great battle with infernal creatures, and a great gaping hole that descended into the earth that closed up when a demon-belching fire exploded and caused a great conflagration. It is believed that these fanciful reports were merely propaganda for the means of converting the local population. What is known is that a survivor informed the Romans that the location required annual human sacrifice, or the hole would open back up and the monsters would become free again. The Romans were not the type to sacrifice humans to any pagan god. However, the location was ideal for the location of a prison. It is inaccessible, and the difficulty of moving through the surrounding terrain provided natural barriers for escaping prisoners. Plus, its reputation as a place haunted by monsters served it well to discourage visitors. So the prison and a surrounding town sprung up, where Gallowtree now stands. As for the sacrifices, from time to time, prisoners had to be put to death. The tree stump you saw before was the largest tree in the area. As you can see by the picture on the wall to your left, a white cedar is a rather ghastly looking tree, often missing bark and looking quite dead, even though it is still alive and growing. That stump was at one time the largest remaining tree on Mount Fiendfell. Thus, it was on this tree that most hangings took place. Over the centuries, the fortunes of the British Isles would wax and wane, but the town of Gallowtree remained practically the same. Cut off from the outside world, it became a privately run prison that would hold any prisoner that anyone wanted as long as the price was paid. If you failed to pay the cost of upkeep for your prisoner, the prisoner would be sent to feed the crow. Please pause the tape and move to marker 3. Here before you is one of the great hoaxes of the late 19th century. Around approximately 1690 to 1700, the town of Gallowtree was destroyed. Considering the timing with the massacre of Glencoe, it is assumed that Gallowtree was simply wiped out by William III. Gallowtree was an independent-minded town that served anyone who had enough coin and had no loyalty to anyone. The town, not the person with the coin. William III's obsession with loyalty oaths would have made him quite angry with this sort of defiance. Even though there are no records of the event, it is assumed that the town was wiped out and the inhabitants killed. Because of its location, William III would have most likely wanted this done quietly, and had it done in a fashion where all records were destroyed. Now the case before you tells another story. These relics were supposedly unearthed in the surrounding area in the year 1822. They are actual, genuine Itza weapons and artifacts dating back to the 16th century. The items before you have been carbon dated and proven to be from that time period. The condition of these artifacts are so pristine that it is simply not possible that they were found in the muck surrounding Gallowtree at the time. How they came to be here in Gallowtree is a mystery, but they also came with a story. The story goes that a large group of Itza warriors, angry at the recent destruction of the capital city of the Itza Maya kingdom at the hands of the Spaniards, had retreated during the final battle into secret tunnels that traverse the world. There they traveled through the hollow earth towards Europe in an attempt to counterattack against the Spaniards in their home country. According to legend, they instead boiled up out of the earth in Gallowtree. Recognizing the Gallowtree as a place of sacrifice, they burned the tree to destroy its mystical power. before descending down into the town of Gallowtree, where they killed without mercy and burned the village to the ground, along with the tree that the town took its name after. However, they were not prepared for the harsh winters of Gallowtree, and so retreated back into the tunnels from which they came. The eventual fate of these warriors from South America are unknown. Of course, this is complete nonsense, but these artifacts were produced as proof of the story, which was proposed by John Cleves Semez. He found them on one of the few expeditions he took outside the United States in an attempt to prove the existence of the Hollow Earth. John Semez believed that there was a gateway in the Gallowtree area that would allow passage into the Hollow Earth. However, obviously, such a passage was never found. Please pause your tape and proceed to marker 4. Welcome to inside the reconstructed lighthouse. Here on the ground floor we have the section devoted to the builder and creator of the Gallowtree Lighthouse, James Dove. James was a devoted follower of Mr. Semez and one of his English converts to the theory that the Hollow Earth exists. James also believed in the Earth expansion theory, a theory that believed that the Earth periodically expanded and contracted. This was an early explanation for the various mountain ridges found throughout the world, which we all know today are actually caused by continental drift. James Dove, an inheritor of much wealth from his family's estate, put forth a great deal of effort into discovering the nature of the Hollow Earth and Earth expansion. He became convinced that the Hollow Earth was once home to an advanced civilization that had abandoned Earth, but that its artifacts still were functioning. It was his belief that there was a timetable and certain events were already set in motion, specifically the rising of the lost continent of Mu and the return of Atlantis. His studies into this field convinced him that the continent of Mu would again rise, and it would happen soon. Using the dubious predictions of Nostradamus, he believed that there would be a war of brothers right before the return of the continent of Mu. This was at the time of the start of the American Civil War, thinking he had no more time before the destruction of humanity. But possessing a great deal of money and influence, he brought people to Gallowtree, forming what could only be termed a doomsday cult. He spent a great deal of his money buying up all the worthless bogs surrounding Mount Fiendfell and proceeded to build the world's tallest lighthouse. It was his belief that when Mu arose from the depths, that the water would wash over the world. He calculated that Gallowtree was in a natural drain area, and thus if enough people came to Gallowtree, they would be saved, and perhaps they could rebuild his country. He reportedly calculated this from documents that he gained by traveling to the monastery on Station Island, where the entrance to purgatory is rumored to exist. The lighthouse was to light the way of the people of the British Isles when the cataclysm occurred. Thus it had to be as high as possible for as many refugees to see. Please pause your tape and proceed to the stairs and up to marker 5. This room, which was once a storage area, is now the historical record of the Great Collapse. While it was possible that this was indeed the tallest lighthouse in the world at the time of the collapse, it was never completed. The mountain was apparently not as stable as the builders had wished, and the entire mountain collapsed, becoming the hill that you see today. Fortunately, few people were on duty at the time, but the damage was catastrophic. This only drove the people of Gallowtree to a greater frenzy. James Dove claimed that the collapse was proof of an imminent flood of biblical proportions. He urged his people to rebuild the lighthouse as soon as possible. However, while he was scouting out the collapse, James Dove disappeared. His followers tried to carry on without him and only managed to rebuild half of the lighthouse before money ran out. With the failure of the coming of the Great Flood, the lighthouse was abandoned. However, James Dove was not entirely wrong about things. As it turns out, the additional weight of the lighthouse, which caused the collapse of Mount Fiensfell, resulted in an opening into an underground aquifer that resulted in the draining of water from the surrounding area. Marshland and bogs dried up completely within 5 years of the Great Collapse. While his theories were crazy, his calculations about the area being an excellent place for water to drain was spot on. All that land became rich farmland, and thus the fortunes of Gallowtree improved dramatically. Being privately owned land by the Dove family, which no longer had any living relatives, it fell under the stewardship of Lord Clifford Huntington Noah Odd. Before you proceed any further, we need to make the following announcement. We ask that you do not enter any area that has been marked with alternating yellow and black stripes, or any areas with the word danger printed in bright yellow. These areas are for staff only and are marked off for your protection. Please pause your tape and proceed up the stairs to marker 6. This brings us to the top of the half-completed lighthouse. This top area was later completed by Lord Odd as the tribute to James Dove. It was this act that was the reason for the Gallowtree Lighthouse's distinctive tavern tankard shape. While the lighthouse is not very tall by modern standards, its location does grant you a lovely view of the surrounding area. Many a night was spent by Lord Odd as he would come up here to stare down at the town of Gallowtree, and then he would turn on the lighthouse. He would then spend his evening writing about many different subjects, and his musings on topics as diverse as the proper use of puns in polite conversation to political intrigue and his desires for the future of Gallowtree. Reviewing his estate's notes, we know that at one point he was host to Americus Semez, son of John Semez, and he helped in the publication of a book that was based on his father's writings, the publication of which paid off the Semez's estate's substantial amount of debt that was incurred by his father's failed attempt to prove his theory when he launched the ill-fated expedition to the South Pole. While you enjoy the view, please listen to this dramatization of a conversation between Lord Odd and Americus Semez that was recorded for posterity by Lord Odd's daughter, Felicia Odd. Felicia did not take part in the conversation. This was found in her private diary.
Your father once said, the earth as well as all the celestial orbital bodies existing in the inverse, visible and invisible, which partake in any degree of a planetary nature, from the greatest to the smallest, from the sun down to the most minute blazing meteor or falling star, are all constituted in a greater or lesser degree of a collection of spheres,
as determined by his examination of the rings of Saturn, and work done by Sir Edmund Halley, Lord Odd.
When was his comet supposed to show up again?
1910, I believe.
Yes, quite.
Did you ask me here to discuss my father's theories again?
No, well, not entirely. Allow me to tell you a story. It is a rather simple story, one you may have heard so many times before to various degrees and topics. It works out like this. There is a momentous event. Someone investigates that momentous event. He looks into the events leading up to the momentous event. As he breaks it down into steps, he finds something odd. One small action that, if changed, would have unraveled everything else. One choice that could have changed everything.
Ah, the story about the nail.
Nail?
For the want of a nail, a shoe was lost. For want of a nail, a shoe. And then it goes on, for want of a shoe, a horse. And then the horse, for want of a...
Yes. Quite. But the story is not my point.
What is your point?
What if you were the man in charge of buying nails, and you dropped one? At the time, you didn't know that if you had not dropped that nail, you could have changed the tide of history. And what if, later, some historian figured out that it all came down to you and that dropped nail? And when you found out, your nation, your country destroyed, all because your seemingly inconsequential error. Tell me, Americus, how would you feel if you were that man?
Well, I don't know. I suppose I would be upset, but I don't see any point of blaming myself. It's not like, well, I suppose I would feel regret. Frankly, I just don't know. It would be a heavy burden.
What could such a man do to redeem himself?
Why do you ask me these questions? Are we speaking of the hypothetical? Yes.
No,
What has happened?
it is not something I can speak of. It is not something that you should know about. There are those who would silence both of us if I spoke of what I set in motion.
If you cannot unburden your soul with me, perhaps you should head to confessional and unburden your soul to God.
No, not even the church is immune to corruption in this place. I fear what I have done will unwind itself for decades, possibly for centuries. But when the events unfold, there must be a reckoning.
Sir, no one can predict the unfolding of time down through the years to such an extent, not unless you have managed to add astrology to your formative body of knowledge.
And yet we know that Halley's Comet will return in 1910.
Well, that is science, sir. Easily predicted and easily proven.
Perhaps science can predict things not so easily proven. Perhaps the future is more certain than you imagine.
You grow melancholic, my friend. Perhaps you need a good leeching. I hear it's good for balancing the human.
I do not need a leeching. Let me assure you, I am already surrounded by them. There is no one I can trust save you. So I have to ask you a favor. An important one. One that you must do for me exactly as you are instructed. One that you will never see a benefit from. But I hope in the coming age it will redeem me for the mistakes that I have made.
Certainly.
Good. Then tonight we take our leave, and you return to America. You cannot speak to anyone. Your bags are packed, and a carriage awaits. Among your belongings are 2 cases. One you may open, one you will not. The one you open will have my instructions and the means to follow them. Do not open it until you are in the States and far, from prying eye.
I will do as you ask, but I must be earnest. Your actions concern me, sir. I worry for your safety. Are you under the shadow of some threat?
The less you know, the better. This will be the last we speak. Not in person, nor by correspondence. All will be made clear when you open the case. But do not before you reach safe harbor. Promise me, for it will be my only salvation.
As you wish. It is the least that I can do for everything you have done for us. I will miss your company, but if this is your wish, then this is goodbye.
Yes, it is. Now do not tardy. Time is against you. I have already made all the arrangements. We will not meet again in this life.
Quite melodramatic, Lord Odd. Perhaps things will improve and we will meet again. Regardless, I take my leave. I will run this errand for you. Goodbye, old friend.
Goodbye and farewell. Goodbye and farewell.
Goodbye and farewell to you as well.
Please pause your tape and proceed to marker 7. Here we come to the end of our tour. These papers were uncovered from the House of Odd's private libraries in 1947 during the rebuilding of that estate. It had sustained damage from a wayward German bomb during World War II. What we do know is that Lord Odd never made it down from the lighthouse that evening. He passed away while sitting at the desk that now sits behind the glass case before you. Was it suicide, or was he murdered? Rumors followed his death. There were tales of curses and deals with the infernal. In the end, the official report states that he passed away from natural causes. However, that report could just be part of the conspiracy that he was so afraid of. We may never know the truth. Whatever conspiracy he was involved with, or the nature of the mysterious cases he had sent to America, we simply have no means of finding out. The Semez family line died out, even though there is still a park dedicated to John Semez in Hamilton, Ohio. A fence marks off the grave where Captain John Semez is buried. An obelisk with a hollow earth in bronze stands there as his tombstone. We hope that this audio tape was informative. This concludes your self-guided tour. We urge you to descend by the iron stairwell and exit through the gift shop, where many items are available for you to purchase. All proceeds go to benefit the Gallowtree Lighthouse Museum. Thank you for your patronage.